In 2023, Peter Obi ran for president and received more votes than any Igbo man in Nigerian electoral history. He won Lagos, Tinubu's home state. He won Abuja. He won the hearts of millions of young Nigerians across every ethnic boundary. And he still lost. Now he is back. Same energy, same message, same coalition strategy, and he is telling anyone who will listen that he does not need the Southwest establishment, that he does not need Yoruba political machinery to win in 2027. But here is what Peter Obi has not answered. If the obedient movement could not convert love into votes in 2023, what changes in 2027? If the Southwest delivered for Tinubu with the machinery of incumbency behind it, what makes Peter Obi think that machinery disappears? And if his own coalition cannot agree on who carries the presidential ticket, what exactly is he running on? Today on AFRONEWSHQ, we are going to do what Nigerian political commentary almost never does. We are going to tell Peter Obi the truth. Most channels will give you the headline. We give you the architecture behind it. If you have never been here before, you just found Nigeria's most analytical political channel. Subscribe, because what comes next in this video is the part they hope you never piece together. What is happening? Peter Obi, former Anambra governor, 2023 Labour Party presidential candidate, has confirmed he is running for president in 2027. He has moved from the Labour Party into the African Democratic Congress, the ADC, as part of a broader opposition coalition that also includes former Vice President Atiku Abubakar and elements of the PDP. He has been conducting political tours of the North, most recently visiting Kano alongside Yoyo Governor Seyi Makinde and former Bayelsa Governor Seriake Dixon in discussions understood to be coalition-building groundwork. He has offered a one-term presidency, publicly stating he will leave office by May 28, 2031 if elected, and he has already alleged that the federal government is actively working to prevent him from contesting at all. The Southwest calculation. Obi's implicit strategic logic on the Southwest is this: he does not need Yoruba establishment endorsement because the Yoruba establishment is Tinubu's base, not an available asset. What he needs instead is to suppress APC margins in urban Southwest centers, particularly Lagos, Ibadan, and Abeokuta, enough that they do not deliver a decisive gap. His 2023 performance in Lagos, where he outpolled both Tinubu and Atiku among young urban voters, is the empirical basis for this belief. The Northern courtship. His active pursuit of the North, through Kwankwaso, through Makinde's intercession, through the ADC coalition framework, is the compensating strategy. The arithmetic is Southeast Bloc plus substantial northern penetration, plus youth vote mobilization in urban centers, plus a unified opposition ticket equals enough to overcome a divided Southwest. Why this matters now? The 2027 election will be decided not just by votes cast, but by votes counted, collated, and upheld by courts. The institutional dimensions of this campaign, INEC's independence, the judiciary's role, the ruling party's use of state resources, are as analytically important as the electoral arithmetic. Peter Obi understands the arithmetic better than almost anyone in Nigerian political opposition. What is less clear is whether he has a credible answer to the institutional dimensions. Obi has said publicly that he cannot be certain of securing the ADC presidential ticket, acknowledging that the coalition's internal dynamics remain unsettled. We will return to what that uncertainty means for his entire strategic framework. There is a documented pattern in Nigerian presidential elections where opposition coalitions that appear formidable 18 months before polling day collapse or fragment within 6 months of the election. We will assess whether 2027 will follow that pattern and why the structural incentives make it likely. The electoral architecture. To understand why Peter Obi's strategy faces structural limits, you first have to understand how Nigerian presidential elections are actually won. It is not simply about who gets the most votes nationally. Under Section 134 of the 1999 Constitution, a presidential candidate must win the highest number of votes and score at least 25% in 2/3 of Nigeria's 36 states, that is, 24 states. This is the constitutional threshold. It is not optional. In 2023, Obi won 25% or more in 12 states, falling significantly short of the 24-state constitutional requirement. His vote was geographically concentrated, dominant in the southeast and strong in Lagos and Abuja, but thin across most of the north and much of the southwest outside urban centers. That geographic concentration is not a messaging problem. It is a structural problem, and it has not been solved by moving to a new party. The INEC dimension. The Independent National Electoral Commission sits at the center of every Nigerian election outcome. Obi has already accused the federal government of trying to prevent him from contesting, and the ADC has on record rejected INEC's revised 2027 election timetable as unconstitutional. These are not peripheral complaints. The management of voter registration drives, the deployment of BVAS machines, the accreditation of polling agents, and the transmission of results all flow through INEC's operational infrastructure, which is funded by a government whose candidate is the incumbent. That is not neutrality, it is managed terrain. The judiciary. Obi spent 3 years in court after the 2023 election. He won his governorship case at the Supreme Court after a legal battle that nearly ended his political career. He knows better than almost any active Nigerian politician how the judiciary can be the final arbiter of electoral outcomes and how that arbiter can be influenced. A 2027 victory, if it happens, will face legal challenge. The question is not whether Obi can win the election, it is whether he can win the election, the tribunal, the appeal court, and the Supreme Court in sequence against an incumbent with state resources and political appointments across all those levels. In 2023, Obi won the popular vote in Lagos State, the single most vote-rich state in Nigeria, and it made almost no difference to the final result. Why? Because gubernatorial and National Assembly elections in Lagos run concurrently with the presidential election, and the APC state machinery, which controls local government structures, party agents and collation centers, was capable of managing the result at the point of collation, even where Obi led at the point of voting. Winning votes and winning counted votes are two different things in Nigerian electoral politics. Obi's 2027 strategy has not visibly solved the collation problem. Peter Obi's actual strategy. What he is betting on. To be analytically fair, Obi's strategy is not naive. It has 4 pillars. 1. Coalition consolidation. By joining the ADC alongside Atiku, Makinde, and other heavyweight opposition figures, he is attempting to solve the vote-splitting problem that cost the opposition in 2023. A unified opposition ticket removes the scenario where Obi and Atiku split the anti-APC vote and hand Tinubu victory with a plurality. 2. Northern penetration via Kwankwaso. Kwankwaso's Kano base delivered significant votes in 2023. A formal alliance with Kwankwaso either on the ticket or delivering his bloc would significantly improve Obi's 25% threshold performance in the Northwest. 3. The one-term offer. By publicly committing to a single term and offering to leave by May 2031, Obi is directly addressing the northern political class's concern about Igbo presidency locking out northern rotation. It is a sophisticated power-sharing signal, and it has been received seriously by some northern stakeholders. 4. Economic conditions. If the Nigerian economy continues to deteriorate under Tinubu, with inflation, currency collapse, and unemployment deepening, the incumbency advantage reverses into an incumbency liability. Obi's framing of governance as economic management rather than political patronage positions him as the credible alternative in a crisis election. Why each pillar has a crack in it? Pillar 1 cracks because Obi has already rejected a VP slot under Atiku, and Atiku's camp has not accepted a subordinate role either. A coalition where both principals want the presidential ticket is not a coalition. It is a negotiation that has not concluded, and negotiations that have not concluded 18 months before an election are vulnerable to collapse at the worst possible moment. Pillar 2 cracks because Kwankwaso is not a guaranteed ally. He ran as a competitor in 2023. His political calculation in 2027 will be driven by what serves Kwankwaso, not what serves Obi. If Tinubu offers Kwankwaso something, a ministerial appointment, a political accommodation, a budgetary favor for Kano State, the alliance evaporates overnight. Pillar 3 cracks because the one-term offer is unenforceable. No Nigerian constitutional mechanism binds a sitting president to a single term. It is a promise, and Nigerian political history is a graveyard of promises made before elections. Sophisticated northern political actors know this. They will not mortgage their 2031 calculation on a gentleman's agreement. Pillar 4 cracks because economic suffering does not automatically translate into opposition votes. It translates into protest, which can be managed, suppressed, or redirected by an incumbent with state resources. Nigerians suffered profoundly in 2023. Obi got the sympathy vote, he did not get the presidency. The Southwest problem in detail. Obi's dismissal of Southwest establishment support deserves close scrutiny. The Yoruba political establishment is not simply a voting bloc. It is an operational infrastructure. It is local government chairmen, ward councillors, party agents, collation officers, and community mobilizers, most of whom are APC aligned in Ogun, Oyo, Osun, Ekiti, and Ondo states, and almost all of whom are Tinubu aligned in Lagos. Obi won Lagos in 2023 among the voters who showed up. But the APC's structural advantage is not just in the vote, it is in who gets to the polls, whose votes get counted, and whose results get transmitted. Without a counter-infrastructure in the Southwest, and Obi has no party structure capable of building one in Lagos and Ogun within 18 months, winning hearts in the Southwest does not win electoral college arithmetic. Silent structural advantages Tinubu holds. Incumbency in Nigerian politics is not a metaphor. It is federal appointments, 44 ministers, dozens of agency heads, state liaison offices, and security sector deployments. It is the ability to time infrastructure announcements, salary payments, and subsidy decisions to coincide with the election cycle. It is the NNPCC revenue management that flows through the federation account and therefore through the political loyalty calculations of 36 state governors. And it is the most important variable that no opposition candidate has ever overcome in Nigerian electoral history. The sitting president has never lost a Nigerian election. Peter Obi has accused the federal government of plotting to prevent him from contesting, saying the federal government of Nigeria does not want me to contest in the 2027 presidential election. This is a significant statement. It is either an accurate description of state interference, which has profound democratic implications, or it is a preemptive framing designed to explain a future loss as stolen rather than earned. Both possibilities are analytically important. If it is true, it means the battle for 2027 is not primarily electoral, it is institutional. If it is strategic framing, it tells us something important about how Obi's campaign is positioning itself for the post-election narrative. Now, if what I just told you surprises you, drop a comment below. I want to know what you think before we get to the part that changes everything. What an Obi victory would mean. If Obi wins in 2027, through a unified opposition coalition, a deteriorating economy, a credible northern running mate, and an INEC process that holds, it would represent the first time in Nigeria's democratic history that an opposition candidate defeats a sitting president. That is not a small thing. It would be a democratic inflection point, evidence that Nigerian elections can produce alternation of power. It would reshape the entire political calculus for 2031 and beyond. What an Obi defeat would mean. If Obi loses again, and particularly if he loses in circumstances that his supporters perceive as manipulated, the consequences extend beyond him personally. The obedient movement's most politically engaged members, many of them first-time voters in 2023, will face a defining choice: mass disengagement of young Nigerians from the electoral process, or deeper engagement with a system they believe is rigged. Mass disengagement of young Nigerians from the electoral process is not a neutral outcome. It is an acceleration of democratic erosion. The Igbo presidency question. Obi's candidacy carries the weight of a larger conversation that Nigerian political culture has not yet resolved openly. The Southeast geopolitical zone is the only zone that has not produced a Nigerian president or vice president since 1999. That structural exclusion is a legitimate grievance, and it is a mobilizing force for Obi's support base that goes beyond his personal qualities as a candidate. The question is whether that grievance, however legitimate, translates into the geographic breadth of support that the constitutional threshold requires. In 2023, it did not. The structural change required between 2023 and 2027 has not yet been demonstrated. Security and governance, the context that Obi himself named. Obi has publicly stated that over 1,000 Nigerians were killed in the first 2 months of 2026 alone. Communities across 25 states devastated by banditry, terrorism, and mass abductions. He has called this a politics of zero humanity, condemning his own political class for scheming about 2027 while Nigerians share funeral programs. This framing is his strongest moral argument and his most politically resonant message. The question is whether moral clarity converts into electoral victory in a system where moral clarity has historically not been the determining variable. Western governments and Nigerian democracy. The United States, United Kingdom, and European Union all issued statements of concern following the 2023 Nigerian election, noting irregularities in the process while shortcoming outright condemnation. For 2027, Western diplomatic attention will be shaped by two competing interests: democratic governance principles that favor a credible opposition process and strategic interests in Nigeria's stability, oil sector partnerships, and counter-terrorism cooperation that favor predictable incumbency. Obi's framing of his candidacy as a governance reform project, emphasizing economic management, security, and institutional integrity, is calibrated partly for this international audience. The diaspora dimension. The obedient movement's most financially significant infrastructure is diaspora-based. Nigerians in the United Kingdom, the United States, and Canada were among the most vocal and financially active supporters of Obi's 2023 campaign. The diaspora cannot vote in Nigerian elections, but it can fund campaigns, generate international media coverage, and sustain the social media ecosystem that shapes domestic political narratives.
The critical question for 2027 is whether diaspora enthusiasm translates into organized domestic ground operations, polling agents, result collation monitors, legal teams, rather than Twitter and WhatsApp mobilization that does not reach the ward level.
The geopolitical context. Nigeria's international posture under Tinubu, including its relationships with the IMF, the World Bank, and Western security partners, creates a context in which a change of government carries geopolitical weight. An Obi presidency, with its emphasis on economic restructuring and anti-corruption, would likely be received positively by multilateral institutions, but those institutions will not intervene in a Nigerian election on his behalf. The battle is domestic. The international dimension is atmospheric, not determinative. The strongest case for Obi. Let me be fair. The strongest case for Peter Obi winning in 2027 is this. Conditions have materially worsened since 2023. The fuel subsidy removal has pushed millions deeper into poverty. Inflation has eroded purchasing power at every income level. The naira has lost significant value. Youth unemployment is structural and deepening. Insecurity has intensified across the North and the Middle Belt. In an election held on economic conditions alone, without the institutional and structural variables, Obi's message resonates with a majority of Nigerians who are living the consequences of the Tinubu administration's policies. Additionally, the opposition is more consolidated in 2027 than it was in 2023. The ADC coalition, fragile as it is, represents a genuine attempt to solve the vote-splitting problem that gave Tinubu a plurality victory with 37% of the vote. If that coalition holds and agrees on a single candidate, the arithmetic shifts meaningfully. Misconceptions in circulation. 1. Obi does not need the North. His youth base is pan-Nigerian. The constitutional threshold of 25% in 24 states is non-negotiable. Youth enthusiasm is real, but geographically uneven. The rural North, which contains the majority of registered voters in the Northwest and Northeast, does not vote on social media sentiment. It votes on community leadership direction, religious authority endorsement, and economic patronage relationships, none of which Obi's obedient movement has systematically penetrated. 2. If the election is free and fair, Obi wins. This is the most emotionally appealing claim in Obi's support base and the most analytically unverifiable. We do not know what a truly free and fair Nigerian election would produce because Nigerian elections have never been truly free and fair. What we do know is that Obi's 2023 vote, even under conditions of irregular process, did not meet the constitutional threshold. A cleaner process helps him, it does not guarantee him. 3. Obi can fix Nigeria in 2 years. Obi has publicly stated, repeatedly, that he needs only 2 years to stabilize Nigeria. Political analysts and commentators have uniformly criticized this as the kind of election cycle promise that has defined and discredited Nigerian political messaging since 1999. The PDP promised transformation in 1999. The APC promised change in 2015. The structural problems of Nigeria, oil revenue architecture, security failure, institutional decay, infrastructure deficit are generational challenges. No president fixes them in 2 years. The promise, however well-intentioned, undermines the very credibility that Obi's brand is built on. Peter Obi's most powerful asset is not his policy positions, his economic record in Anambra State, or his coalition strategy. It is the moral contrast he represents against the current political class. When he sits in the Dorua Babuje community in Plateau State and watches families bury their dead, and then publicly condemns his own political class for scheming about 2027 rather than stopping the killings, that image lands differently than any campaign advertisement. The question AFRONEWSHQ is asking is this: is moral contrast sufficient to overcome structural electoral disadvantage in a Nigerian presidential election? History says no, but history was made on the days when the answer surprised everyone. Most likely next moves. Peter Obi will intensify northern political tours through the first half of 2026, will attempt to finalize the ADC coalition ticket, either as presidential candidate with a northern running mate or as the consensus candidate of the opposition bloc. Will use security and economic conditions as his primary campaign narrative. Will manage the Atiku tension carefully, neither confirming nor denying a joint ticket until the coalition's internal dynamics force a resolution. Tinubu administration will use federal resources, infrastructure announcements, conditional transfers, security deployments to shore up support in contested states. Will apply institutional pressure on the ADC coalition through INEC regulatory decisions, party registration processes, and judicial management of pre-election matters. Will attempt to peel off Obi allies through political accommodation before they become electoral threats. Kwankwaso will continue to negotiate the highest possible price for his political bloc, whether that price is paid by Obi's coalition or by Tinubu's APC. His ultimate alignment will be determined by which side offers more, not by ideological affinity or democratic commitment. That is not a moral judgment. It is a structural observation about how Nigerian coalition politics works. The Southwest will remain the most contested and least predictable variable. Governors Adeleke of Osun and Makinde of Oyo are PDP aligned and ADC adjacent, creating the possibility of organized Southwest opposition infrastructure outside Lagos. But Lagos itself, which delivers more votes than any other state, remains Tinubu's operational base and cannot be neutralized by rhetoric alone. Signals to watch. Whether the ADC coalition formally resolves the presidential ticket question before mid-2026, whether Kwankwaso signed a formal alliance agreement, and whether that agreement survives contact with APC inducements, whether INEC's conduct of voter registration and party primaries in 2026 shows evidence of institutional bias, and whether any significant Southwest governor publicly crosses to the opposition coalition, and whether the economic conditions that are Obi's strongest argument continue to deteriorate or begin to stabilize. Obi's uncertainty about securing the ADC presidential ticket is not false modesty. The coalition's internal dynamics remain genuinely unresolved. Atiku Abubakar, who ran for president 6 times and has a claim to the legacy of the PDP, is not a natural subordinate in any coalition arrangement. The ticket question will be the decisive internal test of the opposition's coherence. If it is resolved with Obi at the top, the coalition has a chance. If it fractures over the ticket, Tinubu wins before a single vote is cast. The historical pattern of Nigerian opposition coalition collapse is not accidental. It is structurally driven. Individual politicians within opposition coalitions face a constant choice between the coalition's collective interest and their personal political interest, and the ruling party has the resources to make the personal calculation more attractive than the collective one. The ADC coalition will face this pressure at its most intense in the 6 months before the election. Whether it holds will depend not on shared ideology, but on whether the coalition's leadership can make defection more costly than loyalty, and on whether international observers and domestic civil society create sufficient accountability to deter last-minute switching. Best case scenario for Obi: the ADC coalition holds. Obi secures the presidential ticket with a credible northern Muslim running mate, ideally Kwankwaso or someone of equivalent northwest weight. Economic conditions deteriorate further, making the incumbency a liability. INEC conducts a credible process under sustained civil society and international pressure. Obi clears the 25% threshold in 24 states. The legal challenges that follow are resolved in his favor by a judiciary that surprises the country. Nigeria makes history. Worst case scenario for Obi: the ADC coalition fractures over the presidential ticket. Kwankwaso defects or remains neutral. Obi runs as the opposition's primary candidate, but without unified party infrastructure. He repeats his 2023 geographic concentration: dominant in the southeast, strong in urban centers, thin across 24 states. Tinubu wins a second term with a plurality. The legal challenge fails at the tribunal level. The obedient movement's most politically active members disengage, and Nigeria's democratic trajectory continues its managed decline. We began with a question. What makes Peter Obi think he can win 2027 without the West and Yoruba, and why can he not? The answer to the first part is Peter Obi believes his coalition arithmetic, his economic credibility, his one-term offer, and the depth of Nigerian suffering under the current administration combine to create a path to 37 states, or at least 24, without needing the Southwest establishment's blessing. That belief is not irrational, it is grounded in real data and real conditions. The answer to the second part is harder to hear, but this channel exists to say the hard things. Peter Obi cannot win in 2027 without solving 4 problems he has not yet solved: a unified ticket with a running mate who delivers northern votes at the constitutional threshold level, a ground infrastructure in the southwest that goes beyond social media and reaches the ward collation level, a strategy for the institutional dimensions of the election, INEC, the judiciary, and the security sector that is more than a public appeal for free and fair elections, and a coalition that holds together not just in press conferences, but under the financial and political pressure that the APC will apply between now and February 2027. Peter Obi is the most analytically credible opposition candidate Nigeria has produced in a generation. His economic record, his personal integrity, and his moral positioning are not in question. The question was never whether Peter Obi deserves to be president. The question is whether Nigeria's electoral system is designed to let him become one. And that is a question every Nigerian must sit with. Peter Obi's path to 2027 exists. It is narrow, it requires several things to go right simultaneously, and it has never been walked before in Nigerian democratic history. That does not make it impossible. It makes it the most consequential political story in Nigeria today. You now know something that most Nigerians watching the news tonight do not know. What you do with it is up to you. Share it, debate it, challenge it. That is how democracies survive. AFRONEWSHQ. Nigeria deserves better analysis. See you in the next one.